As we approach elections now set for the 29th of May, the question that many South Africans may ask is, why should I vote for the African Christian Democratic Party? And I would say to you, look at our track record. The ACDP has been one of the few political parties that has weathered the political terrain and the many storms over the last 30 years. There have been many critics, cynics and skeptics who have said that the ACDP will not last, that the ACDP will not be around in the next elections. Well, here we are. The ACDP has stood firm in terms of our political conviction. The ACDP has stood firm in terms of our moral conviction. The ACDP has stood firm in terms of our biblical worldview. The ACDP has not compromised. The ACDP is known to be a party that has gone against the flow of the current. When one looks at the last pandemic that the country faced and the lockdowns, it was the ACDP that stood and fought for what we said needed to be safe vaccines, the contents of which needed to be made known, and that the vaccinations should not be made mandatory. The ACDP fought for the constitutional right of South Africans, their right to freedom of conscience, their right to freedom of speech, their right to freedom of choice. The ACDP was the only party during the lockdown era and the lockdown period that spoke on behalf of the church, calling for the churches and religious organizations to be opened during the lockdown period, much like the casinos were allowed to operate while churches were closed. The ACDP refused to be silent. The ACDP is a party of conviction. The ACDP is a party that you can trust. The ACDP has men and women who fear God. The ACDP has men and women who are able, trustworthy, men and women that hate dishonest gain, much like the Jethro principle. These are the men and women that the ACDP puts forward. The ACDP has a president that does not have any scandals against him, a president that has a clean track record. Not much can be said about other political parties in this regard, where the ACDP has been in positions of authority. Our MMC, former MMC in the Eastern Cape, was able to turn rubbish dumps into green plain fields where our children who used to play with rodents in the informal settlements now had clean parks in which they were able to play. And he won accolades showing that when the ACDP is in a position of authority, then the circumstances change where the ACDP is present. The ACDP MMC in the city of Tshwane was able to save the city of Tshwane some 2 billion rand, where a tender was found to be irregular. Our former MMC in the city of Johannesburg was able to give out title deeds in the first month of his office, where his predecessor gave out only a few title deeds over 10 years. Our MMC during that period gave over 1,000 title deeds, where his predecessor gave out about 10 title deeds over a period of 5 years. Wherever the ACDP is in positions of authority, change and transformation comes. One of our former members of parliament was the only member of parliament which had a private member's bill that was passed. Sherilyn Dudley made history in parliament when a private member's bill was passed via the African Christian Democratic Party. Our president, the Reverend Dr. Kenneth Meshwe, ensured that South Africa is not a secular state. Were it not for our president, South Africa would be a secular state, and many churches that function in schools and government buildings and institutions would not be able to do so, because there would be a separation of government from public. And so it was because of the African Christian Democratic Party that South Africa has not been declared a secular state. And so very clearly, where the ACDP is in positions of authority, godly transformation, true transformation comes about. We will ensure that when the ACDP is in government, that South Africa is the best country on the continent and indeed the world.